I'm the managing director, Philip Sweenes, the managing director of HHLA International, which is the arm of the HHLA Group, which is mostly known for the operating the ports in Hamburg, but does have a few entities abroad. We have a port, we operate a port in Odessa in Ukraine, and also since 2018, we own the port of Muuga, which is near Tallinn in Estonia. So from Poland, we're going a little bit eastwards up the Baltics, and I'd like to give you a short presentation on who we are, what we're doing there, and then happy to answer any questions. If I can try to, can you see my presentation? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So let's get started. Yeah, HHLA TK Estonia, as I said, we acquired the company 100% of it in 2018. It's I would say the commercial port a little bit outside of the city of Tallinn, roughly 17 kilometers away from Tallinn, which we are owning and will operate until 2062. So it's a relatively long concession that we have to operate the port there. It's still a free zone port, which allows the storage of goods without custom guarantees, quotas, etc. So compared to our organization in Hamburg, it's a relatively small entity, 251 employees. We do roughly 250,000, 240,000 TEUs a year, plus ro-ro and general cargo. And that's perhaps the next slide, which shows where we are present. The key, one of the core activities is the container activities. We are the largest and the only container terminal in Estonia. We have all the major shipping lines or feeder operators in the Baltics calling our terminal. And I think one of the advantages is we have excellent, for Estonia and in Estonia, excellent connections to the road and railway system. Currently, we operate with 3 SCSs, but it is planned that next year we will add 2 further cranes in order to have more flexibility and more capacity to handle all types of container vessels. The biggest container vessels that currently are calling the Baltics.
Philip, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're only seeing, we haven't got a full page of your screen. It's still in small version. Are you able to expand it so it's full size?
Can you see it now at full size?
Not yet. No, we've. Is it the button at the bottom right hand side of your presentation?
Yeah, that's what I tried to do. Let me. Technology is difficult. No, I'm afraid that's the best I can do. Can you still see the slide I'm talking about, or
yes,
not?
That's a bit better.
Okay, good. So again, the second leg we operate on in the terminal is the ro-ro and con-ro leg, where we have 2 lines and 3 operators calling the port of Muuga with several departures. We have in total 6 departures a day, in particular to Helsinki, to Vuosaari, which is the commercial port next to Helsinki. And for that, we have 3 dedicated berths that we can use to operate the ro-ro cargo, and planning to invest in a double ramp so that we really can handle here also the biggest ferries that are operating in the Baltics in the near future. And it's a very short crossing from Finland to Estonia, and considering that the terminal is outside of the city of Tallinn near the highway, it allows trucks to very quickly get onto the highway and out of the town without congesting the city of Tallinn. Last big leg that we have is the general cargo, where we're handling all kinds of bulk, dry bulk, break bulk, vehicle parts, food cargoes, etc. And we have a whole series of warehouses and open storage areas near the at the quays, and also direct railway connection. So we can load, if required, we can load directly onto railway wagons. We handled last year roughly 850,000 tons of cargo, mainly cocoa, grain, pellets, construction material, etc. Finally, we are offering value-added additional services like storage of containers, repair and washing, weighing, but also stripping, storing the goods, and then re-putting the goods into containers. So we have a whole set of different services that we can offer to our customers. Now, why is, I'll get that. So why is in our view Thailand an interesting point? Because it's quite close, and it's at the crossroads of a total population of 235 million people. It's close to the Russian market. It's very close to the Central European countries like Belarus. It's a direct corridor also going into Ukraine, but also towards the other Baltic states, Poland and Western Europe, in particular with the new railway that is planning to be built, Rail Baltica, which is going to be a European gauge railway connecting the Baltic states to Western Europe, that will start actually in the port of Tallinn. So directly on our terminal, we'll be able to load containers and bring them directly without changing the gauge from Tallinn to Hamburg to any parts of Western Europe. So for us, there's a big opportunity here to concentrate somewhat the cargo flows, be it by ro-ro, be it by container, be it in bulk in Tallinn, and then to redistribute to the rest of the European countries and also on a worldwide basis. From the development plans that we have, and we've already been working on that in the past 2 years since we have started, or since we have invested in the terminal, but we are looking continuously at further investment and improvements. So from an infrastructure point of view, we are going to probably, or we are close to finalizing the building of further warehouses to allow storage of goods, very modern warehouses. We are redesigning the terminal to allow a complete segregation of traffics between container, ro-ro, and bulk traffics, and having a quick access gate in and gate out. The new 2 post-Panamax cranes that are coming next year will allow us to handle the biggest vessels that we have on the in the Baltics, and will allow us to handle up to 3 vessels simultaneously. And then further smaller investments in rail, in RTG trailers, etc., to be on the forefront. That's the one side. The other side is Estonia is known for being a very digital country, and that was one of the reasons why we were attracted by Estonia, is also to use the country or the port there as a test bed for digital development. So we are already in the process of finalizing, or almost finalized, a very automated gate with complete self-service terminals. We have now a terminal communication system put in place, which allows easy communication between the shipping lines, I would say all the actors within the port community, and trying to go more and more to a completely paper-free connection with customers and with other stakeholders. So that's all the different digital things that we are looking at. And the last and also big area for development for us is railway connection. And there's several areas that we are looking at. I mean, Estonia used to be a transit point for goods coming from Russia. So that is certainly an area we will continue to pursue. But on the other hand, there is the whole north-south corridor looking at going from Scandinavia to the southern part of Eastern Europe and further down going into Turkey, where Tallinn can be a gateway to bundle cargo and bring it down to Ukraine and to Turkey. We are looking at Silk Road initiatives, and sorry for my for the predecessing presentation. Currently, we see a lot of, or we have some concerns around the situation in Brest-Malacevice, and I think a lot of operators are looking for alternatives in order to make sure that the huge volume increase that is planned in the next years will have several gateways they can pass through, and Tallinn could be one of those gateways. We are looking at a trailer project whereby we could take trailers directly from Finland, put them on the ferry, and then from the ferry on the train and drive them down in a first instance to Lithuania and further on to Poland and to Western Europe. And that will also, that's also the first step to what is coming later, which is Rail Baltica, which I talked about a little earlier, a European gauge railway connecting directly the Baltic states with Western Europe. So a lot of projects that we have in the going, a lot of positive developments that we can see and that we are actively working on. Now, where do we stand today, and what are the effects of Corona and the longer term impact that could have on volumes in the Baltics in general and in Estonia? The Baltic countries were actually quite shielded from the whole pandemic in the sense of a very few number of cases, very quick measures put in place to restrict movement and to secure the well-being of the population. Also on our terminal, we immediately mid-March or beginning mid-March took very stringent measures in order to make sure that not only the people were safe, but also the port could continue to be operating. And with very limited restrictions to our customers, we have managed to really make sure that operations were normal during the whole crisis situation and continue to be normal now, while at the same time making sure that we didn't put our employees at risk. From an economic point of view, there has been all over Europe quite severe contraction. We expect between -5% and -8% GDP contraction for this year. It's further affected by the borders to Russia and I would say a deeper recession in Russia that has certainly affected traffic flows in the past months. But at the same time, the economy in Estonia is slightly more resilient due to the fact that it's a very an economy which is very on an import, on a physical good import and export is very driven by agro products, and those were less affected by the pandemic. On the contrary, this year it's supposed to be a absolute record grain season, and everybody's trying to find space to store grain, which is now difficult to get. That being said, we were also impacted by the problems that most of the shipping lines encountered in that their whole supply chains were disrupted, in particular in the repositioning of empty containers, and that created quite a lot of headaches where empty containers were not available where they should have been, and for a country that is quite export oriented, it meant for us often that we were in shortage of equipment in order to secure the export of goods. How do we see the longer impact? Well, currently we're seeing that volumes are gradually coming back to the levels roughly of 2019. We expect that by the end of the year we will have reached that level again. That being said, always dependent on, and somebody else talked about it earlier on what could happen if there is a second wave, if there is a second lockdown in Estonia, but also in Europe, because that would affect also the outlook for Estonia. We'll have to see. I think a lot of people are tapping in the dark on that one. That what we've been thinking of in Estonia, but also in broader terms, also at HHLA in general, is what is that, how is that, and how could that affect the situation in the longer term? What's going to be the new normal? And I've heard a lot of doomsday scenarios saying that globalization is gone, supply chains are going to be regional and local, etc. Yes, there might be some elements of that, but I think the doomsday scenario we've heard of, we don't see them happening, or at least not to the extent that some people have shown them. What we do see is that while a lot of customers and shippers had just-in-time deliveries, and therefore were very dependent on supply chains not breaking down, they have realized that a situation like this can create complexities and can create breakdowns in the supply chain, and therefore would be considering more having a little bit of more of a stock reserve than in the past, in order to come through such a crisis situation, which would imply increased number of warehousing capabilities being available in order to store goods nearby, so that they can be accessed to in case of a crisis. And the other thing that we see is, instead of having one source of supply, that most people or companies are starting to think about duplicating the supply chains in order to have a redundancy in case of need. For us, what does that mean in terms of the Baltics? For us, we see this as a positive development for us, because we feel that Estonia can profit from this, being in a quite central position in the Baltics and close to some of the key Russian, Scandinavian, and Middle Europe, Eastern European markets. The country is close to those markets. The infrastructure links by rail or by road are very good and very developed, and are further being developed. There's a lot of space available in Estonia for warehousing and value-added activities. And there's the high IT affinity, which will allow to have paperless and digital processes requiring less direct people involvement or people contact involvement. That was also one of the things we learned, is that with all the tools we had in place, moving most of our people out of the office into home office and managing the terminal with most of the administration people, or almost all of the administration people working from home, is doable, is workable, and that was a positive. So this is, in a nutshell, a little bit our thoughts on the presentation of our activities in Estonia, and our thoughts on how the development of the Baltics could take place. Very happy to take any questions afterwards. Thank you.